Over the next few months, along with other friends from our community, we began visiting the emperor several times a week, bringing groceries, helping cut his hair or clip his toenails, and cleaning up around his camp. Gradually, he began to trust us and revealed more about himself. His real name was Robert. Estranged from his family after years in mental institutions, he had moved west from Wisconsin. During the sexual revolution of the 1970s, he was something of a celebrity in San Francisco's gay club scene, hosting naked pool on Sunday afternoons at a popular bar south of Market, where he would prance nude around the pool table, exchanging fiery jabs with patrons. The owner of that club let him live in the basement of the building for many years. I also learned that the emperor was locally famous for crashing society balls, civic celebrations, and parades, announcing himself swathed in a velvet cape and crown, accompanied by his matching miniature poodles on tiny leashes. As he got older, and perhaps more peculiar, he lost his social currency and became more and more isolated. The emperor's health continued to deteriorate, and by December, he was confined to his wheelchair. We pleaded with him to move into an assisted living facility, and I set up appointments with social services and with the health department, trying to get him the help that he needed. Instead of taking up these offers, the emperor predicted instead that the apocalypse would come by the first of the year. And then I'm going to kill myself with a fatal dose of phenobarbital mixed with vodka. I've already got the phenobarbital on hand. Emperor, I would be so sad if you choose to kill yourself, I told him. Why should you care if I live or die? He asked indignantly. Emperor, you are valuable to God and to all the people who love you. We would miss you. Nobody's ever loved me, he replied bitterly. I'm really sorry you feel that way. After all this time that we've spent together the past few months, I hope that you might consider Joseph and me to be your friends. At Christmas, we decided to throw a party for the emperor, including his favorite foods and a birthday cake. I told him that I was going to bring my whole family along, so he would need to be on his very best behavior. You see, we could never predict what the emperor would say or do. There was a full moon on that December evening when I knocked at the door to the emperor's bus. He came out wearing an elegant purple bonnet with freshly painted fingernails. A thin young woman who we knew worked as a prostitute lived in a trailer on the street nearby. She joined us along with one of her clients. We ate by candlelight, serenaded by music from a transistor radio, and as we talked and laughed and ate together, the emperor declared that this meal was delicious. After dinner, my wife Lisa put candles on a cake, and I said, hey, let's sing happy birthday, maybe to someone who hasn't celebrated their birthday for a while, hoping that we could sing happy birthday to the emperor. Who could we sing happy birthday to, I asked. Just then, beaming, our 3-year-old son Noah blurted, Papa, it's Christmas time. Let's sing happy birthday to Jesus. I panicked. That was the worst thing I could imagine mentioning in front of the emperor, and I waited to see what he would do. But slowly, with a big toothless grin, he said, yes, let's sing happy birthday to Jesus. So under a clear and starry night, the 8 of us sang together. Lisa and me, a streetwalker and her John, a 63-year-old transvestite, and 3 small blonde children with red rosy cheeks. As I helped the emperor back into his bus, he turned to me and said, this was the best night of my whole life. Thank you. Early on Sunday morning, just after the first of the year, Joseph and I knocked at the door of the emperor's bus. There was no response, but we heard a faint groaning from inside. We broke down the door and found the emperor collapsed on the floor, lying in a pool of his own waste. He tried to talk, and through slurred speech, I deciphered that he wanted some water. We sat him up and gave him a drink. And as we began to change his clothes and wash his body, what had happened slowly dawned on us. He had taken the phenobarbital as planned. Searching quickly, I found scattered tablets on the floor near a bottle of vodka. The rest of our group had just arrived when we'd called for the ambulance. As the paramedics lifted him onto the gurney, he pleaded with me to stay beside him. I rode along to the hospital in the back of the ambulance, holding his hand. At the emergency room, after he was stabilized, a nurse invited me in, where I stood alone by his side. "Emperor," I said, "it's Mark." With eyes still shut, he murmured, "I wanted to die. Why did you save my life?" I hesitated for a moment, searching for words. "Emperor, you are my friend, and I care about you." Agitated, with speech still slurred, he asked, "But why? Why do you care about me?" And then louder and more desperately he repeated, "Why do you care about me?" Slowly, I lifted my hand and began to caress his bald head. "Emperor, we are all loved," I said. And then I heard him snoring and watched his chest rise and fall with each belabored breath. I stood there for a long time, praying and thinking about this man who felt so lonely that it was nearly impossible for him to imagine that anyone would care. Shortly, the hospital psychologist invited me into her office, and as I shared what I knew, I had the strange realization that although I'd only known the emperor for 6 months, I was probably closer to him now than anyone else alive. The next morning, when Joseph and I arrived at the hospital, the emperor was wide awake and smiling. With hugs, he greeted us like long-lost sons and quickly handed Joseph a wad of money to go and buy each of us a prime rib dinner from his favorite divey restaurant. When Joseph returned with those prime rib dinners, we sat down at a table in the mental ward of the hospital together, and we talked, and we laughed, and we ate, and the emperor loudly declared that this meal was delicious. So I realized that there may be some unique absurdity to my story, but what I do know is that I feel alive when I'm testing the limits of my own boundaries, finding a source of love that is greater than my own, and discovering beauty in unexpected places.